Well, hello friends. Welcome to the SerenityOS update for December 2019. Now, before we begin, let me just tell you about sponsorship real quick. So the Serenity operating system and all of my content about it is always going to be free and open source. But if you would like to support my work and maybe one day make it possible for me to do this full-time, then there are 3 donation options at the moment. So I'm on Patreon, GitHub sponsors, and PayPal. And you can find links to all of those things in the description below. So check it out if you're interested. And of course, as always, a huge thank you to everyone who's already supporting me on one of these platforms, or if you've supported me in the past. Super duper appreciate it. Thank you so much. That's really awesome. Thank you. So let's talk about December and what's been going on. So I guess the first thing I'll show you is, I'll just bring it out right away. It's here. It's themes. Switch to dark theme because we now have themes, color themes at least. It was time to add them. So the dark one is one that I've been adding. And then Conrad was nice enough to make a hot dog stand, which is just absolutely great. We're gonna go back to dark. And these are actually quite simple files. It's just in res themes. We have, say, dark ini, for instance. It's just an ini file with a bunch of colors listed. So it's very easy to edit these. But there's no GUI app yet for making themes, but we'll build one eventually. Another big feature that I've been working on this month, I guess, is purgeable memory. So that's more of a kernel feature, but I guess I will still talk about it. So it's a feature where you have a kind of memory that you can allocate from the kernel, and then you can tell the kernel, hey, I don't need this memory right now, but if you let me keep it, that would be nice. But if you were to need it, you being the kernel, so if you need it, you can just take it from me, no questions asked. And this turns out to be a very effective thing, especially in a graphical environment, because very often we have big bitmaps and stuff that we might not really need strictly at the moment, but it's still useful to have them. So for instance, this file manager here has a big backing store for its bitmap. This UI is stored in a bitmap, actually in 2 bitmaps because we do double buffering. So if we look at the file manager here, let me just sort by PID, we can see that it has 1.8 megs of purgeable N and 1.5 megs of purgeable V. And the purgeable V and N. V is for volatile, N is for non-volatile. So volatile is the kind of memory that the kernel is free to take at any moment, and non-volatile is memory that the kernel has to leave alone. So the volatile, we can just give it to the kernel right away by just calling purge-v, and we'll see that the kernel just snatches that memory right from the file manager. But the file manager still has some memory allocated, and if we start interacting with it, then it will go back to normal, and we see it again, 1.5, 1.8 here. But one thing that I really like this month is that I also made it so that if something is completely covered by another window, then he makes all of his bitmaps volatile. So now we can actually purge and see the file manager go away completely here, which is very nice. Because this purge command just sort of forces it to happen, but this will also happen automatically if the system starts to run low on memory. So purgeable memory, very cool feature. The inspiration comes from macOS and iOS, but I learned that it also exists on Windows, but they call it offer and reclaim memory, I think. But very cool feature. And also shoutouts to Sergey, because he integrated it with malloc. So malloc in Serenity now also uses purgeable memory, which means that when we free memory, we don't deallocate the memory right away. We just make it volatile, and then the kernel can take it from us if needed. Otherwise, we hang on to it in case we need it later. So it's this very cool mechanism, and I'm still looking for ways to integrate it with the system. And something else that's new is we have this little minimize, unminimize animation. I don't know if you could see that before. Just a little thing, but I like it. And let's see what else we can show. Oh, right. So I was making a profiler this month because I started getting a bit interested in what programs are doing. So let's start something kind of busy. Let's run the fire program. And let's see, where is it? Right here. So we might be wondering, what is PIB28 really doing, right? So we start profiling it. And let it run for a little bit, just gather some data, and then we stop profiling. And now we have in proc profile, fire prof. We'll save that. And now we can open this with the profile viewer. So it's very much like a typical sampling profiler, where you have a bunch of samples up here and you can select a range that you're interested in, or you can just have a look at all the samples. And then we can drill down into the call tree here and see what's it really doing, that fire program. So we see that in this case, most of the time is spent in paint event right here, and also in the fire timer event, where we end up calling into the kernel to do something. And here we can also see that we end up calling select to do something. And it's just a pretty nice program, I think. And we also support inverting the tree in case you want to see it upside down. I know that's something that I like. Then you can see the hottest innermost frame, and then you can explore it backwards to see who's been calling it. We know that 65 out of the samples, which we don't have that many of, are spent in handled paint events, so it's definitely the dominant time thief here. Anyways, that's the profiling system. It's very much under development, but it has been really helpful so far to identify some interesting issues. And oh, I guess I should mention that in support of this, I had to make it possible for tree views to have multiple columns. So you see now that we have both a sample column and a stack frame column. Previously, you could only have a single column in tree views. So what else? Oh, since I'm talking about tree views, let's bring up Hack Studio. Oh, this looks kind of crappy with the dark theme. All right, so here, this now uses a tree view for the files. So which is pretty nice, I think. And that's, I guess that's most of what I did in Hack Studio this month. I got a little relaxed on that. I guess, oh no, I did update the find in files UI a little bit. Let's see what we did here. If we search for int, you now get this table comes up here instead of, it previously was just a list. Now it comes up in a table format. It's still not perfect, but at least it is something. I need to get back to Hack Studio at some point, do some more work on it. So, what else did I have? Oh, yeah, right. So let me show you Paintbrush. So in Paintbrush, we now have an ellipse tool, a rectangle tool, and the line tool allows you to constrain the angle by holding down Shift. These are some nice little features, clearly very necessary features in any serious desktop painting application. So I'm pretty excited about that, although it's going to be even more exciting when you'll be able to save your creations, which you can't do yet, but we'll get there. But thank you to Casper and to Shannon, who worked on Paintbrush this month. And if someone else did and I'm forgetting, then thank you too. Okay, so then I guess we can check out the browser. So, and there's not that much new this month. There are some new selectors, some like first child, last child, only child, stuff like that. And I did a bit of integration work with the purgeable memory stuff. So images now use purgeable memory, for example. So if you scroll something outside of the viewport, then it will become volatile. I guess I can show you that here. If we sort by PID, browser, and we scroll that image into view, then you can see that we now have 520 kilobytes volatile, but if we scroll it out of view, then it bumps up because we allow the kernel to take that image away from us when it's not on screen. So it's just an example of many, many, many little things that we can do with purgeable memory if we put our minds to it and figure out where it might be useful. But I really like that particular feature, so I wanted to show it. Then we also have a new process priority system. So priorities now float between 1 and 100, higher being the higher the number, the higher the priority. And I made a whole video about the implementation of that, so you can go and check that out in the OS hacking series. And we also have a bunch of I/O counters here now. You can see the amount of file I/O, Unix socket I/O, and IPv4 socket I/O per thread, which has also been quite interesting in finding some strange behaviors. And of course, if you're interested in purgeable memory on a per region basis, you can go down here in the process memory maps, and you can see for each region if it's currently volatile or non-volatile. So there's a lot of stuff that you can look into with that. By the way, something that I absolutely love this month is tab completion in the shell. I should have mentioned that early, so I probably already used it. Will and Jesse both worked on tab completion, which now shows suggestions and you can complete stuff, and it just works the way you expect it, and I freaking love it. So thank you so much, guys, for working on tab completion. You have elevated the user experience of the Serenity shell like 10x easily. So thank you guys for that. It's just, I barely even think about it anymore because I got used to it, but it's so good to have it. And we got a cal command this month by Andreas. Not Andreas, but Andreas. And we can actually, why don't we bring up a calendar for next year? You can see that the new year starts on a Wednesday. I hope that's accurate. I guess I should know because we're theoretically here right now. Maybe we can see where we are right now. This is where we are on a Tuesday. Yeah, okay, looks legit. Pretty cool. Thank you, Andreas, for working on this. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we got these little quick launch icons down here now. Previously, you had to go in the menu to grab these very commonly used things, and Sergey was nice enough to put them down here for quick access, which is really, really sweet. And I use these all the time, so thank you. And oh, something else that's also new is these things up here. They used to all run in the Windows server, and they were part of the menu rendering, but these are now actually 3 separate processes, one for the clock, one for the CPU graph, and one for the mute-unmute thingy. And if we look in top, you can actually see them. They're like CPU graph menu applet, clock menu applet, and audio menu applet. And it's pretty sweet. It required adding some new mechanisms in the API to Windows Server to allow a process to render into a little window in the menu bar. But I'm really happy with it because it removes a lot of weird complexity from Windows Server that just did not belong there. Like we used to have a separate thread that was just gathering CPU usage information and stuff like that. It's really, really nice to get that out. And thank you to Hussein, who worked on the clock applet. Now, it's a little bit annoying because every time I boot, they show up in a random order, and I need to do something about that, but currently it's still an issue that we have. This I wanted to show you. So, Serenity operating system. Tibor went and made large versions of the fixed width fonts, and they are just too cool. I think he used some kind of scaling algorithm for this, and I just love the way these look. You can see that we have a little visual glitch here in the in the side where we show the line number. I guess we were doing something silly, but it needs to be fixed. But I love these bigger versions of the fonts. They look so cool. So thank you, Tibor, for these. Let me look at one more of them. Oof, so chunky. Look at that. I hope he makes more of them because they're so cool. Anyway, what else do we have? So I guess, oh yeah, right. I should have left the text editor up actually. So now you can actually drag and drop in the system. So if you're interested in editing the taskbar ini file, you can just drag it into text editor and it will open. Pretty cool. So this works by, you can drag multiple things as well if you like, and this works by communicating via the Windows server. So a process or a program can initiate a drag, which is what the file manager does here, and then on the receiving side you can get a drop event in the text editor program, and that drop event just contains the information that the Windows server passes on from whoever was initiating the drag. So it's still kind of, I'm still kind of figuring out how that should work, but I like that we started on the feature, because I think drag and drop is just such an essential part of a desktop in this paradigm at least. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then there's a whole bunch of random kernel things that I worked on this month. We support the NX bit now, which we use to enforce so that only stuff that's actually supposed to be executable is executable. So that's quite nice. Let's just look at something. Why don't we look at the CPU graph apparently. So if we look here, we see that this guy right here, this elf mapping from the executable, is the only region that has the X set in the whole process. So if you try to jump to code, or if you try to make a jump to anywhere in this address space, we will not crash. Previously, we did not crash. We just let you jump anywhere. And that's a really nice correctness enforcement thing, I think. So I'm very happy about that. And of course, it has security benefits as well. And I've also implemented a whole bunch of other things in the kernel. We now use simple wait queues to simplify waiting for IRQs and stuff like that. We have simple futex now, which is used to implement pthread condition variables, which allows condition variables to actually block until someone wakes them up, instead of like busy waiting and busy yielding, which they were previously doing. So that we have a Nintendo emulator that someone ported to Serenity, and it was Dan. So Dan ported it, and thank you, Dan, by the way. And now it works quite well, because previously it would churn through the CPU in pthread condition variables, but now it can just block when it wants to block, and it's pretty cool. And I guess a big port thing that I worked on this month was sound support in SDL. So it's now possible to hear sound in games like Quake. Although I'm not going to bring that up right now because I don't want to risk it crashing. Or actually, why don't we just bring it up? Maybe we can hear it. I gotta hear that iconic. Yeah, you get the idea. Alright, well that actually did crash the kernel. Gotta debug that, why Quake crashes the kernel on exit. But you could hear the sound, I hope. He was saying, "Hoo!" So I think these are all the things I wanted to show you today. But something interesting that happened earlier this week was that somebody used Serenity as a target system in a capture the flag competition at the 36th C3 conference, and it was pretty cool, and a bunch of people were able to break into the system, and there was a very nice exploit and write-up by Fire30 who was able to break into the system, and I made a video about that exploit, analyzing that, if you want to check that out. And you can find it on my channel. I guess I'll link it below. And it was kind of interesting. It made me realize that maybe there are some things that we need to be a little bit more tight about security-wise in the system. So that's something that I'll try to think about a bit more going forward. But it was just super, super awesome that that someone even considered using it in a competition like that, and I was really, really stoked to learn about it. So thank you to everyone who was involved with that, and I hope that those of you who were able to exploit the system, I hope that you will get in touch and maybe tell me what you did, because that would be really interesting, and I would love to fix it so that you can have a bigger challenge next time. And I hope there will be a next time, because it's really cool. So yeah, I guess that's everything for this month. So thank you so much for tuning in and for keeping in up to date with the project. It has been a really, really awesome and interesting year, and I'm really, really glad that you've all been here with me. Whether you've been here since March or if you just came here today, doesn't matter. I'm really happy to have you all, and it's going to be really interesting to see what we can do next year. And if you ever want to chat, then you can find us in the SerenityOS channel on the Freenode IRC network. And you can also find me on Twitter as AwesomeCling. If you want to talk there, wherever, it's all good. But I will see you all next time. So Happy New Year, and bye-bye.